In this video, I'm going to go over the top 5 mistakes that most people make when they move to Calgary for the first time. And you know, I've had the good fortune of helping a lot of people relocate to Calgary from other parts of Alberta, other parts of Canada, and other parts of a lot of different countries. And the one thing that I hear all the time when they first arrive is, well, I think we're gonna maybe rent for 6 months to a year and get a sense of, you know, how the city feels and, you know, where we would like to live. That is mistake number 1, and I'm gonna tell you why. First of all, Calgary is about 1.4 million people. This is not a massive city like Toronto or Vancouver. You can get around the city pretty easily, and it does not take long to figure out what areas of the city are going to work for you. Once you narrow down your lifestyle, you know, the things you like to do, you know, where you work, you can get pretty close to what neighborhoods are going to work, and you don't have to wait an entire year to make that decision. And right now, if you actually look at the market, Alberta, especially Calgary, does not follow the trend of the rest of this country. And prices right now are rising at this moment at between 1 and 1.5% per month, depending on the location, the price range, and the style of home that you're looking to buy. So while you're renting for 6 months to a year, you're gonna pay that much more for a house that you could have figured out pretty easily when you got here as to what area you wanna live in. So don't make that mistake. And by the way, if you do like this video, do me a big favor and give it the old thumbs up so you like it. And you can of course subscribe, and you can hit the bell and be notified as I do these videos, because I actually do about 2 a week. And if you find them really helpful, I would appreciate that, and that would be great for you to get more of these videos. All right, mistake number 2 is not looking for value, but shopping just on price. Now, when it comes to value, look, there is a lot of things to consider. Number 1, of course, location. I mean, location, right? I mean, that's real estate. You've got to look at the resale value of the property. I mean, you always want to think in terms of, well, what if I decide to sell this property in 2, 4, 5, or 10 years from now? Is this property going to be attractive to the masses? I have seen people make the mistake where they justify and go, well, yeah, this location isn't great, or this floor plan's pretty wonky. I'm gonna just go ahead because it works for me, but it may not work for the masses. And I've gone in, you know, to some of these properties to sell them, and they can be a real challenge to sell. So always think that way. Number 1 is the location. Now, it's not just the neighborhood when I'm talking location. I'm talking the location of the lot within that neighborhood. I mean, if it's backing onto a freeway, that's hard to sell. Or, you know, if it's on a really busy road, or, you know, if there's a supermarket or some commercial property that has a ton of traffic that is showing up across the street, that is always difficult to sell. Let's be honest, most people, when they're buying a home, they're looking for that quiet street in that quiet neighborhood. Everybody, let's just say the masses, they want quiet. So always think in terms of that. And I see this happen so often where someone, you know, sees a property that's on a busy street or backing onto all this noise, but the price looks attractive, and they start to rationalize it and justify it because maybe the house is a bit bigger than what they're finding in the locations that are quiet, and they think, wow, this is actually a pretty good deal because I'm getting a bigger house and the price is that much lower, but you're not thinking in terms of what happens when you go to sell it again. So always think resale when you're looking to buy a property, and especially when you're coming to Calgary for the first time. Okay, mistake number 3, saying no to older established neighborhoods. I'm surprised by some of the people who move here from other countries. They always want the brand new house. Now, don't get me wrong, brand new houses are great. Sure, they're fantastic. But when you buy in a neighborhood that has brand new homes, you are competing with the builder. And you have to keep in mind, you know, if you go to sell it again in the next 5 years, there's probably a lot of new construction that's also being sold, and so you're competing with new construction prices. So your supply and demand ratio is not at the greatest. And you have to also consider these new developments don't really have much for mature trees, so you've got that backyard where, it's very open, kind of like the fishbowl living, so to speak, where you're cooking your burgers and, on a Saturday night, and your neighbor next door can take a look and see how big your burgers are that you're cooking. So you got to remember that there are some negatives to just going with new construction. In Calgary, when you get into established neighborhoods with mature trees, those are actually high demand neighborhoods. For people that are just moving here, they're really surprised, and I show them the stats that some of these older neighborhoods, like North Glenmore Park, really high demand community. All of the homes are old, and some of them of course have been renovated, but that's just a really high demand neighborhood. And it's amazing the ROI, the return on investment on these high demand neighborhoods, because there really is a limited supply and a high demand. And I don't think you need to be afraid of it. I think the mindset for a lot of these people that come here is, well, if I get a newer home, I won't have any problems, it's gonna be new, so I don't have to put any money into it. If I buy an old home, it's got an old foundation, an old wiring and old furnace. Well, that's what inspections are for, and I can tell you a lot of these older neighborhoods, the homes have been really well maintained, and it's not as much of a fear as you might think. So do not rule those out. I can tell you, and I can show you all the stats if you want to reach out to me. The older neighborhoods, most of them, not all of them, but most of them actually have a better ROI and higher demand than the newer neighborhoods do. All right, number 4, you really have to consider the floor plan of the property, the size of the yard, and the construction of the property. So that's quite a few for number 4, but let's talk about the floor plan first of all. In the late 70s and early 80s in Calgary, I don't know what some of these builders were thinking back then, and the architects. I think they were just kind of getting bored of building bungalows, from the early 70s onward. Actually going all the way back to the 50s, they were building all these small bungalows. And suddenly in around 1976, 1977, you started seeing some pretty outrageous floor plans that they started building. And it's quite comical when you look at these properties. And it went on until, around 1986, 1987. And this is just my own personal belief, but I think these architects and builders were just kind of bored building the same kind of properties. So they started doing all these wonky floor plans. And they're not very functional. I mean, a lot of them have got like galley kitchens that are really small, and non-usable space. These sunken living rooms that make the downstairs, have 7-foot ceilings. So, this is just not very functional. And when you look at, the newer properties, and that is one of the big advantage of going newer, is you get the open concept floor plans, and they're designed for entertaining. They're designed for, just really functional family homes. So you have to be really careful with these wonky floor plans unless you're prepared to do a major renovation. If you buy one of these and you try to sell it again down the road, they are always hard to sell because people walk into them and they're confused by the space, and it really doesn't really help your cause. Now, the other thing is, if you're not aware of poly B piping, there's a lot of information out there about it and it's quite negative. We had poly B was used, it's this gray piping, and it was used pretty much from around the mid-80s, all the way up until the early 2000s. And this particular kind of piping was exposed to sunlight, and it has demonstrated that in many cases that has started to crack. Now, my experience in working with a lot of inspectors, most of the cracking has not been in mid-pipe. Most of it has been actually at the connections. But, when rumors flow around, of course, it creates fear. And, for a lot of buyers, they get a little nervous about this. And then, to add insult to injury, some insurance companies decided that in their infinite wisdom that they weren't going to offer any insurance on any poly B piping home. And so that just added more fear into some of the buyers. But I will tell you, I have I've been involved in a lot of sales with poly bead piping homes, and it's not as much of a fear from a standpoint of having an issue with the property as you might think, but you have to be aware of the fact that there is a stigma, and I can't control that. And if you do buy one of these properties, they can be harder to sell because of that stigma. So you really got to be aware of that. Okay, now the third thing to consider is the size of the backyard. This is really important because we don't have a really long summer in Calgary, so people really want to enjoy their summer months when we do have the warmer weather. So if your yard just does not have any room whatsoever in the back, or maybe you've got one of those properties where the garage is right up against the house, those are always hard to sell. So once again, when I talk about people who've just moved here and they might see something, well, the price is pretty attractive, it doesn't have much of a yard, but it works for us and we don't spend much time outside anyway, so it's okay. Yeah, again, that's really good for you, except that when you go to sell it again, that can be a really big concern for people. So you absolutely want to factor in the size of your yard. There's got to be a little bit of a yard back there for most people. They need that, they need to enjoy it. And not to mention, there's so many people now with pets that that's also a really important part of people's decisions is, where does my dog go? How do I let my dog out in the backyard? Dog-friendly homes definitely have higher resale. All right, mistake number 5 for people that are just moving here when they're looking for a home to buy is not making an offer when they find the property that really works for them. Now, let me just elaborate on that a little bit. I can't begin to tell you how many times I've met with a buyer moving here from somewhere else, and they describe to me in detail what they're looking for. And with the kind of experience I have, I'm pretty good at being able to narrow down those properties pretty darn quick. It's kind of like going to see your doctor and you describe your symptoms, and your doctor has the prescription after they listen to you. And it's really similar for someone like me. And so I think it surprises people so often that, that I'm able to find something that checks all their boxes so quickly. And I think there's a perception by a lot of people where, okay, well, we're just gonna start looking, maybe we'll have a real estate agent show us around, and they're not really thinking that they're gonna find something right away, or they have it in their head that, well, this process is probably gonna take, a couple of months to find the right place. That's just not the case. You could walk into a place, it could literally be the first one, and it could have everything that you're looking for in a home. It could have the right floor plan, the right location, the right price, no stigmas attached to it. I mean, it really does have everything you're looking for. And what? The only reason you're gonna not make an offer is because you feel like you haven't seen enough? That probably isn't the right decision, because that so often happens is you keep looking and you start comparing it to that first house that you lost, and you wished you would have grabbed it when you did. But of course, that's hindsight after you've looked at 20 more homes and realized, well, that house really was the right one. We should have grabbed it when it was there. That's why it's so important to understand and meet with a professional and really get a deep understanding of what it is you're looking for. So often people have a general idea, but when you meet with a professional and we drill down deeper into what will work, that's when you can really understand and narrow down which is the right house. But take it from me, when the perfect house comes up, if you're in a position to make that offer, make sure you buy it. And the other thing to consider is you want to be sure your offer is going to be strong. We're in a strong seller's market in Calgary, so you want to be in a position where all your ducks are in a row. You've got your completed financing approval and you're ready to make a strong offer. If you follow these guidelines that I've just given you, if you will, and avoid these 5 mistakes, trust me, you will have great success moving to Calgary, and you'll be able to get into the right house in a timely fashion. Hey, if this video has been helpful, just give it the thumbs up. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and of course, you can hit the bell and be notified for the next one that comes out, because there will be one coming up pretty soon, because I do these every single week.